On tonight's ITV News, joy in another Iraqi city as Saddam's power base shrinks even further. This time it's Kirkuk, but the celebrations are the same. More looting in Baghdad. Today it's the palace of Saddam's son. But there's danger still for American troops. And after 34 years, Concorde flies into history. Good evening. Another city fell from Iraqi control today, and another statue of Saddam Hussein came crashing down. This time it was the northern city of Kirkuk. With American help, Kurdish fighters entered the heart of the country's northern oil field and managed to take most of it. It's clear the battle for the north is now gathering momentum. US Special Forces and Kurdish fighters has pushed out of the Kurdish zone. Their main targets have always been the key oil cities of Mosul and Kirkuk. And now that Kirkuk has fallen, the Republican guards are retreating and reportedly heading for Mosul. From Kirkuk, Julian Manyon reports.
In Kirkuk, there was no need for American troops to topple the statues of Saddam. The Kurds did it for themselves by hand. Here there was no doubting the passion of the crowds. The hand that oppressed them for so long is broken. Saddam's defeat is a triumph for the Kurds. Earlier today, the northern front finally broke wide open. On the heels of jubilant Kurdish troops, we drove through what were the Iraqi front lines. The burnt-out tanks hit by American warplanes testified to the stubborn but futile resistance that Iraqi troops put up until they fled. Today, many surrendered, unable to endure the bombing any longer. These soldiers told me that they hadn't heard about the fall of Baghdad because any radios they had were confiscated by their officers days ago. East of Kirkuk, the Americans were still bombing to open the way for the Kurds. We came in from the west, down deserted roads through the oil fields that have made Kirkuk such a rich strategic prize. At the entrance to the city, the bodies of Iraqi soldiers lay in the road. A statue of Saddam in uniform had failed to inspire resistance, and it was torn down by a fire engine commandeered for the task. Inside the city, an orgy of looting had begun. The Kirkuk Chamber of Commerce was emptied of its contents, and Kurdish guerrillas hauled away their loot on pickup trucks. Before our eyes, Kirkuk has given itself over to anarchy. Here in the center, a supermarket is on fire, and in front of it, a small crowd is trying to tear down yet another of the images of the fallen dictator, Saddam Hussein. All over the city, there is looting, there is firing in the air, and there are still, it seems, small pockets of resistance, particularly in the military district of Kirkuk. But the pillars of Saddam's power have been smashed by American bombs. This was the headquarters of the secret police in Kirkuk. In the offices of the Ba'ath Party, Kurdish soldiers smashed official slogans and then amused themselves by pretending to be the men who used to control this city. For the Kurds, this is the capture of the place that they see as their historic capital, and they are determined to efface every symbol of the tyrant's rule. Julian Manyon, ITV News, Kirkuk.
There was an ominous reminder in Baghdad tonight that after the exhilaration of yesterday, and although much of the city is now under American control, it's not safe or secure, even for the liberators. At least one American was killed at a Marine checkpoint by a suicide bomber. Throughout the day, Iraqis have been ransacking any buildings associated with the old regime. One of them was the home of Saddam's son, Uday. From Baghdad, John Irvine reports.
Getting acquainted. Very deliberately, the US Marines are trying to strike up a rapport with the people who are now their responsibility. But there are still problems bringing control to Baghdad, particularly at night time. In the pitch black of a city without power, these soldiers manning a roadblock became nervous.
Stay the back! Back up!
When a car fails to stop, it's the cue for a violent gun battle. Bullets are sprayed everywhere. In parts of Baghdad that the Americans haven't yet reached, there has been looting. This man took the horse from a stable at the home of Uday Hussein, Saddam's eldest son. We find the house, a large gaudy structure, a place that just a few days ago people daren't even look at for fear of their lives. People have wasted no time clearing the house and wrecking what couldn't be easily taken. They haven't quite worked out just how to reach this chandelier yet, but other than that, they have stripped this place bare in less than 24 hours. Call it plunder, if you will, or perhaps payback. These Iraqis were rifling a home of a senior member of the Mukhabarat, Saddam's dreaded secret police. It also seemed to be some kind of monitoring station. There was sophisticated equipment here. In the basement we found burning archives and evidence of electronic surveillance. These people are stealing from a shopping centre. It has become widespread. John Irvine, ITV News, Baghdad.
As John Irvine said, one of the major problems in Baghdad tonight is general lawlessness and in particular looting. It's clear that the Americans do not want to become a police force, and in any event, weary after 3 weeks of battle, today they were reflecting on the dizzying speed of events. From Baghdad, James Mates reports.
In the dust and the poverty of southern Baghdad, we found a population busy with the task of liberation. The liberation, that is, of anything that wasn't nailed down and of quite a lot that was. And amid this frenzy stood the US military machine that so recently rolled into this city, refusing to intervene. For now, at least, they are soldiers, not policemen, and will do nothing to stop these people using literally anything that moves to grab this chance, to grab what they can. Barely a day after fighting fierce gun battles on the streets of this city, the US Marines now man checkpoints or take the chance to wind down after 3 weeks of fighting their way towards the capital. It all ended much sooner than most of these men had dared hope. But perhaps the most important thing for these Marines, more important even than the early end to this battle, is their reception by the Iraqi people. Now, they believe the Iraqis are welcoming them here. Whether that is right or wrong, it does make these troops feel that they are liberators rather than occupiers.
Very overwhelming. The people were just absolutely incredible.
You feel you're liberating them or occupying them?
We feel we're liberating them because eventually we will leave and go home to our wives and families.
I really enjoyed seeing the people react the way they did when we rolled through town. They were really happy to see us for the most part, and that was really rewarding for us.
Yeah. Do you feel like a liberator or an occupier?
For me, it's a liberation.
Definitely a liberation.
The danger now is that the euphoria of the past 2 days turns to a dull resentment as the US presence here stretches from weeks to months. These Marines freely admit their specialism is warfighting, not nation building. James Mates, ITV News, Baghdad.
American and British commanders have continually stressed over the last few days that the fighting in Iraq is by no means over. But while military planners are mapping out the final stages of this conflict, politicians are grappling with the equally difficult problem of mapping out the peace. Tom Bradby in our graphic studio looks at the road ahead for Iraq.
This war isn't over yet. There are pockets of resistance in Baghdad, and of course coalition planes continue to bomb cities in the north. The US 4th Infantry Division is moving towards Tikrit. Those who know Saddam best say if he's still alive, that is where he'll be.
What he is doing now, they have rented a huge number of houses, and he is moving in the most populated poor areas, not even in the rich areas. And he is moving from one house to another, 2 hours, less than 2 hours.
Special units are also hunting for weapons of mass destruction. It'll be embarrassing if they can't find any, though yesterday's pictures from Baghdad do help in terms of justification for the war. But attention is now turning very rapidly to winning the peace. Modern Iraq was created by the British after the First World War, and it's traditionally been ruled by the Sunni minority, most of whom come from the West. But the Shias of the south make up 60% of the population, the Kurds of the north another 17%. Getting agreement isn't going to be easy. There are two immediate problems: getting the country's oil going again, the principal source of its wealth, and above all, as we've seen again today, restoring law and order. The British have been cooperating with religious leaders in Basra. They're also trying to re-establish sections of the police. The new American governor will probably need to forgive middle-ranking and junior servants of the regime if the country is to function again quickly. This war has been a major success for the people whose idea it was, conservatives in Washington. But in order to reap the benefits, they've got to get the country back on its feet and under control, fast.
Tom Bradby. One of the men Tony Blair wanted to play a role in the new future of Iraq was assassinated today. Abdul Majid al-Khoi, a senior Shiite leader, was stabbed to death as he prayed in a mosque in the town of Najaf. Mr. al-Khoi, next to Mr. Blair here at a meeting in London, left Britain only last week to return to Iraq from exile. Let's go now to Washington and to our correspondent Robert Moore. Robert, this man was apparently killed by a faction of his own religion. Doesn't this show what a tortuous process forming a new leadership structure in Iraq is going to be?
I think that's right, Trevor. I think it does show how easily Britain and the United States may get sucked into local religious and tribal politics. I think, as our reporters have made very clear today, there is a power vacuum now right across most of Iraq that needs to be urgently filled. Will it be filled by the United Nations? Will it be filled by Iraqi exiles? On this issue, Trevor, there are disagreements not only between the United States and Europe, there are also very sharp disagreements within the Bush administration. It will not be easy.
And Robert, what about the timetable for filling that power vacuum in Iraq?
Well, there is a timetable if all goes well, a very important caveat. Frankly, US officials are going to be running events for the next 3 to 6 months, and then after that, a power may be slowly handed over towards an Iraqi interim authority, a first step towards national government. In a couple of years after that, then there is the prospect of national elections. But none of this will be easy. It'll be complex and controversial. Everyone, I think, recognizes that Iraq is a society that has been brutalized by decades of dictatorships and by many, many wars. Trevor, back to you in Kuwait.
Robert Moore, thank you. Back in Britain, the first opinion poll since the fall of Baghdad shows a big rise in support for Tony Blair's leadership. The YouGov poll for ITV News and the Daily Telegraph was conducted today. People were asked to rate Tony Blair's handling of the crisis. 67% thought it was good or excellent, compared with just 47% before the war. We also asked whether people were satisfied with Mr. Blair as Prime Minister. 57% said they were satisfied. That's 12% higher than before the conflict began. Let's join now our political editor in Downing Street, Nick Robinson. This makes pleasant reading for Mr. Blair, but I suppose these are early days in this Iraq crisis.
Indeed, and that's why, Trevor, you've not seen Tony Blair talk about the fall of Baghdad yet. That's why he told his cabinet this morning it isn't over yet. He knows there could be military setbacks still. He knows too that new questions will emerge. Where are the weapons of mass destruction? Where is Saddam Hussein? Eventually, where is that Middle East peace process that he and George Bush promised? The irony of talking about polls, of course, is perhaps that's the greatest legacy of this war for Tony Blair. No more will people accuse him of only caring about the polls, or being too cautious. But what does he do with this new authority that he undoubtedly has over his party and the country? Most of the problems he faces after the war aren't susceptible to the relatively easy decisions that a war leader has on the economy, on our European destiny, on the public services. He can't simply make a decision and watch things happen. And history teaches a lesson, even to those who win wars. If you appear more interested in matters abroad than matters at home, the public may respect you, but they may punish you. Ask Churchill. He knew that.
Nick Robinson, thank you. Now, it was once apparently Saddam Hussein's pride and joy, but now his personal yacht, the biggest ship in Iraq's navy, has been bombed into a twisted, smoking hulk. It is still afloat in Basra, but only just. And with the collapse of the regime, it too has been looted. Bill Neely reports.
Saddam's men are no more and his yacht is no more. This was his presidential palace at sea, with a place for his helicopter to land. It had every luxury. Even a few days ago, this would have been unthinkable, because for 30 years here in Iraq, Saddam has been untouchable. Now his ship, like his power, is destroyed. You're watching the impossible, or at least it would have been last week. Down with the Ba'ath Party, they chant. Saddam's men would have shot them within 5 minutes. Now Saddam's men are no more. Fury barely controlled.
Stay! Get up! Stay on there!
A very young female soldier trying to stop an Iraqi mob from robbing a bank. The whole unit was having a hard time. They're finding weapons, lots of them, of every kind except one. Weapons of mass destruction. Remember that? Not a single one has yet been found. The Royal Marines are now beginning a slow pullback through the south they captured and out and back to Britain in a month. They decimated the Iraqi army that faced them. Rebuilding Iraq will be tougher. Water, democracy, freedom and responsibility. Tough tasks for a poor, shattered country. Bill Neely, ITV News, Basra.
Now to other news. And after 30 years, supersonic passenger flights are coming to an end. British Airways and Air France say their fleets of Concordes will make their final flights in October. It appears they've become just too expensive for travellers and much too costly to maintain. Our transport correspondent Joyce Ohajah reports on the end of an era.
For nearly 30 years, it's been the world's only supersonic passenger jet, the ultimate in air travel. But dwindling revenues have got the better of it, and Concorde's flying days are soon to be over. It was a dream for air travellers.
And now she's ready for takeoff.
The first test flights 34 years ago stunned the world of aviation. A plane that could travel twice the speed of sound, more than 1,300 miles an hour, and cross the Atlantic in just 3.5 hours. But disaster struck nearly 3 years ago. 113 people were killed when an Air France Concorde crashed near Paris, forcing BA and Air France to ground their fleet and make costly modifications. And over the past 13 years, pieces of the plane's rudder have fallen off in mid-flight at least 6 times. So this is the end of Concorde. Over the years, mainly celebrities and business passengers paid thousands of pounds for the transatlantic flight. But these are tough economic times.
It's a sad day, but we've come to it for 2 reasons. Firstly, the demand for premium travel, particularly on Concorde, has declined quite substantially over the last 12 months. And also the cost of maintaining her and keeping her aloft is going up quite substantially.
It's certainly one of the most beautiful planes ever to have graced the skies. But in the end, the cost and a series of technical problems proved too much. So come October, she'll be grounded, and it'll be the end of an aviation era. Joyce Ohajah, ITV News, Heathrow Airport.
To end tonight, back to Iraq and to the role propaganda continues to play in the war. In Britain, we take television for granted. It's a source of information and entertainment. That's not been the case in Iraq. For years, their programs have been a fairly tedious diet of speeches from their president and songs about how wonderful he is. Today, a new channel called Towards Freedom was launched, but only for those with electricity. Its first 2 stars were Tony Blair and George Bush. Their message, Iraq will soon be run by Iraqis for Iraqis. Interestingly, one of the first signs of that will be when propaganda is replaced by proper programs and not political speeches. And that's the ITV News at 9. We'll have the latest on developments in Iraq and more of today's other news at 11:30. You can also keep up to date on the ITV News channel. But from Kuwait and from our teams in Iraq, goodbye.
ITV National Weather, sponsored by PowerGen. PowerGen. Power in good hands.
Hello, good evening. So today turned out to be fairly chilly, but thankfully as we head towards the weekend it isn't going to be as cold as it's been of late. Still maybe 1 or 2 showers lingering. Now any of those showers tonight will die fairly slowly, in fact, across the country. A widespread frost in some places, and the further east you are, the likelihood of some fog patches. So a bit of a grey start across the country tomorrow morning, with that fog still lingering through the morning, but once it does eventually start to burn away, it'll leave a day really of broken clouds, some decent sunshine. Any showers really right at there confined to the far north of Scotland, but temperatures not doing too bad, particularly across England, much better than of late. 12 is 54 in Fahrenheit.
PowerGen. Power in good hands.